after what I can only assume Ryan Reynolds thought was a triumphant appearance on Saturday Night Live's 50th anniversary, he must not have loved seeing Colin Jost come back to Saturday Night Live last night with a joke at his wife Blake Lively's expense.
Zelensky was asked to leave the White House, then he appeared on Fox News and said he thinks he can still salvage his relationship with President Trump, which is like Justin Baldoni saying, "I'd love to work with Blake again."
Live, Colin Jost came back live and clearly made a joke at Blake. Now you're poking fun at it. So now it's just a big joke? This whole thing's a joke? This is absolute cringeworthy. And
when Blake Lively was dismantled by the SNL host, she lost it. On live television, you might be wondering who could possibly be angry with this well-known couple. Well, it turns out that the person causing the resentment is none other than Scarlett Johansson's husband. Yes, Scarlett Johansson is Ryan Reynolds' ex. It was February 2025 during SNL's 50th anniversary special A Night, which was meant to commemorate 50 years of comedy, but instead turned into a public discrediting of Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds. Let's face it, this was long overdue. They strode into that studio as if they still had any credibility left, despite the fact that the world had spent the previous few months watching their $400 million lawsuit disaster play out like a burning garbage truck rolling downhill. Everything was going well until Tina Fey and Amy Poe casually asked Ryan Reynolds, "How's it going?" Instead of taking advantage of the one chance to simply smile and nod like a professional, Ryan smirked and said something that proved to be the most self-defeating thing imaginable in that split. Even Steven Spielberg appeared desperate to be somewhere else, and Amy Poe barely managed a why. Meanwhile, Blake Lively maintained a steely silence, her expression sharp enough to cut glass, knowing full well that everyone in the audience was now thinking about that massive lawsuit. Second, the entire atmosphere changed, and the laughter that followed wasn't genuine. Rather, it was the nervous secondhand embarrassment kind. Instead of keeping quiet or attempting to contain the harm, Ryan and Blake, who hadn't appeared in public since Justin Baldwin dropped that explosive lawsuit like a nuclear bomb, strutted into Saturday Night Live like royalty, acting as though they could charm their way out of any predicament. The smokescreen was swiftly broken because, in reality, Hollywood has already moved on and the industry is done acting like these two are a golden couple. It was, at best, a delusional move. The audience realized the truth as soon as they entered that SNL studio. Blake had spent months crafting an Oscar-worthy victim narrative while Ryan was about to ruin it all with one of the most embarrassing live TV moments of his career. However, while Ryan was busy putting his career in jeopardy, SNL had something even harsher in store for Blake. Colin Jost. This wasn't just any joke. It came from Scarlett Johansson's husband, a man who had every reason to be angry with Ryan Reynolds. His delivery was cold, calculated, and absolutely lethal. The joke wasn't just a lighthearted roast. It was a powerful message that turned Blake into the punchline, confirming what everyone had already suspected. Hollywood no longer respects her, and they have temporarily stopped believing her painstakingly constructed victim narrative. As they took in the stark impact of that line, the moment that sealed Blake Lively's doom, the audience fell silent. Ryan believed he was displaying his trademark humor a la Deadpool, but all he did was prepare himself for Colin Jost's final devastating blow. In one terrible night, Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively's meticulously planned public relations facade fell apart, turning them from Hollywood royalty into punchlines that have been known for years in the industry. Blake Lively sold a flawless, photoshopped fantasy to the world. The effortlessly charming actress, the feminist darling, the Hollywood sweetheart who could do no wrong every interview and red carpet appearance was painstakingly planned to convey humility and perfection. But when 2024 rolled around, reality crushed her PR fairy tale. And let's face it, Ryan Reynolds just can't seem to keep his mouth shut. If he had a modicum of self-awareness, he wouldn't have let that joke die, but instead, he doubled down. This entire episode is a stark reminder that when the truth comes to light, no amount of charm or stage humor can hide it. In that moment on Saturday Night Live, as Colin Jost delivered the final blow, the entire carefully constructed empire of Blake Lively's public image began to fall apart, sending a clear message from Hollywood that they no longer respect her or her story. Being a really nice person, Kirsty just congratulated Blake on her pregnancy. It wasn't a contentious or loaded comment, it was just a kind, encouraging remark. However, Blake used that as an opportunity to launch a personal attack, and Kirsty responded with congratulations of her own. pointing out that Flyhaven wasn't truly pregnant and had even discussed her infertility issues at the time. It wasn't an unintentional slip or miscommunication. Rather, it was a calculated attempt to embarrass someone on camera. This wasn't your usual celebrity backlash over a poorly timed joke. Rather, Blake lively revealed to the world who she really is. In Hollywood, you're usually covered as long as you're useful, but once your reputation becomes a liability, they'll drop you without hesitation. Blake Lively became Hollywood's newest PR disaster. Did she apologize? Did she take any responsibility? Of course not. When a celebrity's world begins to fall apart, the standard response is to escalate the crisis. PR playbook after months of spiraling and witnessing her meticulously constructed victim narrative fall apart. Blake called in the most powerful and shadiest fixer she could find, Nick Shapiro. If you don't recognize him, let me explain. Shapiro isn't just any PR guy. He's a former CIA official who worked for both Obama and Biden, a man known for manipulating media narratives and spinning reality until no one knows what to believe. And Blake hired him to clean up her mess. The irony is astounding. For months, she turned around and hired the most powerful, ethically dubious PR fixer on the planet, and she wasn't done yet. Within weeks of bringing in her crisis, Blake ran to every tabloid and journalist, crying about how Justin Baldwin had hired a PR firm to support his case, acting as though it were the most sinister move in the world. Handler, the New York Times started running suspiciously pro-Blake articles with headlines announcing her legal victories. But in reality, her subpoenas had been rejected, her legal strategy was failing, and her case was falling apart. None of that mattered, though, because her PR team was busy making headlines to change the truth, and they quickly revealed how the media was being manipulated, bringing the entire shady operation into the public eye. Suddenly, all those alleged PR victories started to fall apart, and Hollywood was paying attention to what happens when you go from being one of the most adored actresses to a full-blown PR disaster who hires extra operatives to clean up your mess. If there has ever been a real example of karma in action, it was in January 2025 when Ryan Reynolds was brought into the lawsuit. After months of hiding behind sarcastic onliners and Deadpool quips, thinking he could joke his way out of accountability, reality came knocking, and it didn't just knock. It kicked down the door because the evidence was damning. It turns out that Ryan wasn't just the naive supportive husband in the background while Blake played the victim. Rather, he was an active participant in the takedown of Justin B. Elon. There was a covert meeting in March 2024 where Ryan sat alongside Blake. Sony executives and top-tier PR manipulators weren't there to support his wife at all. They were there to ensure that Baldwin was removed from Hollywood. This was all about power and not justice. According to a January 2025 Deadline report, Ryan Reynolds went all scorched earth and demanded that Baldwin be fired, not just suggested it. When Ryan isn't performing for the camera, his true self emerges, and sadly for him, Sony executives actually listen. He put so much pressure on Sony that Baldwin, who had spent years developing It Ends With Us, was abruptly cut out of his own film, leaving him blindsided and betrayed. All of this was done to give Blake complete control over the project, not to protect his wife. Instead, Ryan essentially handed her a loaded weapon. Ryan's behavior in that meeting was aggressive and humiliating, a far cry from the charming, fun-loving persona he had developed on Twitter. By January 2025, that choice had backfired spectacularly, and Baldwin was not only defending his career, but also facing legal charges of civil extortion, invasion of privacy, and abuse of power. Rather than being the beloved Hollywood golden boy he once was, Ryan Reynolds was soon named in the lawsuit that exposed him as an industry bully. The scandal exposed the harsh reality of how the industry functions, and studios abruptly started to distance themselves from him as Ryan's reputation collapsed. Blake's decline quickened as they were widely mocked and were no longer regarded as a member of Hollywood's golden couple. The public quickly discovered that Ryan had deliberately ruined Baldwin's career and Blake had ejected him. Their attempt to steer the conversation and control the industry backfired, leaving them mired in PR catastrophes and legal issues. In the meantime, even though he lost control of his film, Justin Baldwin was the surprising victor in the end. This bitter dispute and scandal revealed the real nature of Hollywood's power struggles and sent a strong message. Integrity and loyalty are in short supply. Commodities, there's no going back once you betray someone like 50 Cent or, in this case, allow betrayal to fester. Hollywood has moved on, leaving Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds to deal with the fallout from their deeds as Justin Baldwin regains control of his story and prevails in the conflict.